Joining me is Sean Spicer, Donald Trump's first White House Chief of Staff. Sean Spicer, always great to see you. Hours into this war, Trump's critics were already calling it illegal. 1 day into this war, his critics were saying its aims were unclear. 2 days into this war, his critics were talking about another quagmire, maybe a Vietnam or Iraq. And 3 days into this war, there are reports that Trump's MAGA base feels betrayed by him taking America into a war, and Vice President J.D. Vance is frozen out by Trump for being against it. How long do you think before the American public turns on Donald Trump, or will it?
I think quite the opposite. Look, the president's got a track record here. Midnight Hammer, which is the first attack on Iran's nuclear capabilities, and then the operation called Absolute Resolve, which is the Maduro snatch and grab down in Venezuela. One of the problems going into this, meaning the entire term, was that there was this sense that the only way that you could do military intervention was by a prolonged follow-on force. What Donald Trump has already shown us twice, and I believe he's going to show us a third time, is that there is a third way of foreign policy, which is you go in, you achieve your strategic and national security objections, and then you move on. There's no follow-on force in Maduro, in Venezuela after Maduro. After Midnight Hammer, we went in, we made our presence known, took out nuclear capabilities, some of the nuclear enrichment at that site, and we moved on. And I think this is what's going to happen similarly. The president's warned Americans it may be, a week or two or maybe even 3 or 4. But this is not going to be a protracted, prolonged war as it was in Iraq. Donald Trump is well aware, Andrew. I mean, you know this. This guy campaigned for 10 years on ending prolonged forever wars. He's certainly not going to be one to start one. He understands the political consequences of that. So all these people, I think, are just desperately misreading him the same way the Iranians misread him, frankly.
Absolutely. I think there's a bit of misreading at the moment, too, by people saying, oh, you promised regime change in Iran. No, he didn't. He promised to create the conditions that Iranians could change the regime. It's up to them. He's looking after America's interests first. I mean, big surprise. Now, it's interesting, all this criticism about Donald Trump. He says now that the worst is yet to come for Iran's regime and is not going to get bored with this war. People say, oh, look, after a week, he will get bored. He'll turn his attention elsewhere. Do you think he will?
No, not at all. I think the big takeaway, though, is if you are one of the remaining leaders, and I do say that one of the remaining leaders in Iran, you better get the message. He's not kidding around. He's willing to take decisive action. I think he's basically making it clear. We've shown you what we can do. We can do more. And frankly, the way that he's talking, we can do a lot more. Get the message, make a deal, and move on. But I would hesitate. If I was one of those remaining leaders and I saw the precision, by which the Ayatollah was killed and some of these other leaders, I would be very nervous going to bed tonight and every subsequent night. So there's a saying that's kind of taken over the internet, FAFO. I'll leave your listeners and watchers to go Google that themselves. But if I were one of those folks, I would get the message really quick. If I screwed around, I'm about to find out that the U.S. means business, especially under the leadership of this president.
I think they're also looking at each other thinking, which of you is telling Mossad or the Americans where we are to kill us? There must be a lot of spies or double agents in that group too, for the intelligence to be so precise as to where these regime leaders were. Now, Donald Trump, I asked you about, would Donald Trump get bored? That's the whole thing now. We had the, Trump always chickens out, the Takeo Trump. I think that's now gone. He doesn't. And now we've got the, he's bored. He'll move on. In fact, Sean, Donald Trump has believed for 46 years or more that the US was too weak against Iran. He said in 1980 that the US should send in the army to rescue the American hostages being taken by the then new Islamic regime. Here he is then.
That they hold our hostages is just absolutely and totally ridiculous. That this country sits back and allows a country such as Iran to hold our hostages, to my way of thinking, is a horror. And I don't think they'd do it with other countries.
So, Sean Spicer, Donald Trump has been thinking about this for almost half a century.
I get a kick, Andrew. I always say to folks, so much of what Donald Trump says and does is an open book. And I mean that literally. Go read his books, The Art of the Deal, The Art of the Comeback. Get these countless clips out there. He talks about whether it's tariffs and fair trade and the U.S. getting ripped off, whether it's Iran having a nuclear bomb or nuclear capabilities, and why we wouldn't take them out. Here's the thing that's so ironic about this entire situation and what I get a kick out of politically here in the United States. Leader after leader for decades has talked about the threat that Iran poses to the region, to our servicemen and women throughout that area, to America as a whole. And it's Donald Trump that takes decisive action. And suddenly now they go, I can't believe he did this. Where was that? Where were they when Joe Biden said, don't? Where were they when Kamala Harris said, don't, with respect to Iran's leadership? It was Donald Trump that finally said, I told you don't, and now I'm going to show you what I mean. Like, what is the problem with so many of these leaders that they get away with on a whole host of issues not following through? The one hit against Donald Trump as a politician is that he actually does what he said he would do.
I think that's absolutely correct. And Sean, this is a real blow for China as well, isn't it? I mean, Iran was close to China. It was giving also Russia all those drones to attack Ukraine. They're losing one of their best assets in the Middle East.
Well, also one of their best customers. I mean, think about where China gets its oil. Between Venezuela and Iran, you've got a major choke point to the Chinese economy now. This is where their oil comes from. So it's not just the drones and the military aspect, but you're absolutely right. This is a huge blow to China. And I think there's some people in the United States that are finally starting to connect the dots and realize, hey, maybe there's actually something more to this.
And finally, Sean, he's been picking off Chinese allies, Venezuela, Maduro's gone, the leader there. The oil supplies have been switched to American control. He's going for Iran, obviously. Next should be Cuba, which has already imposed a blockade on fuel supplies to Cuba, apart from emergency and humanitarian supplies, which is a trickle. That could be next.
They may fall on their own. That's the interesting thing. I was in an Uber here the other day. The driver was from Cuba. And I asked him, he spoke in broken English. We actually used an app to speak back and forth because his English was as good as my Spanish. And I asked him how things were. And he said, it's an absolute disaster there. They're in turmoil. I think Cuba may collapse on its own weight very soon without U.S. doing a thing beyond what it's doing economically.
It's fascinating. Donald Trump is completely remaking the map of world alliances and centers of influence. Sean Spicer, always great to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time.
You bet, Andrew. See you next week.